And welcome back to the Part-Time Otaku Podcast. My name is Grant.
My name is Dave.
It's your first time listening. This season we are covering My Hero Academia Season 5. This week we are talking about episode 24. Again, so this is an anime-only podcast. We have no insight into the manga or anything like that. So we're pretty much just going... pretty much what we've seen so far and what happened with this week's episode. So before we get right into the thick of it, we'd like to give a shout out to Auditory Glory, sick name, for the Endeavor Nomu thumbnail.
I knew you were going to be like, that's a sick name.
I don't know. Just good wordplay. But anyway, but Dave, you had sent this to me and I was just like, yes. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that fight scene, there are a couple fight scenes it feels like will live in My Hero Academia, like, Hall of Fame forever. And will forever be, like, a good source for fan art. And this is no exception. Really cool art.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you for the wordplay and also this excellent artwork. So we'll jump into the synopsis and we'll get into the plot. Shigaraki remembers his first encounter with All For One during the climax of his battle with redestro.
Big episode.
Yeah.
Big episode.
Lot. Jack, I don't know about you, but I was genuinely surprised. We were kind of getting I didn't realize we were going into a second parter. I knew we were going to continue the plot of the fighting and all that, but I didn't know we were still going to be working into it like an origin story.
Oh,
which
right.
was kind of, maybe it was obvious, but by the end of the last episode, I kind of thought we were just jumping straight into the redestro stuff, and that was going to play out. So this is it was kind of like a pleasant surprise.
I liked, so I agree with you. I didn't think that's how they were going to handle this, but I really liked that they made the two-parter his two different names for the episode titles.
Yes.
I'm not always huge on overanalyzing episode titles or paying a ton of attention to them, but I love that last week the episode title was Origin Tenko Shimura, and this one was Origin Tomura Shigaraki. And it really is an origin for his character, but also, we learn about how he became what he was, and by the end of the episode, he's kind of something even more. So it's like kind of an origin evolved kind of 2.0 version of him by the end. But yeah, I thought it was a good episode, man.
It was well, I will say, I'm jumping ahead. I'm not a fan of the ending of the episode.
Yeah, well,
we'll get into that.
but I know already what you're talking about.
So, but even with saying that, I do feel, before we get into the plot, I do think this was a very good cap off to this My Villain Academia arc we've had. Mm-hmm. It's been the absolute standout of the season so far as these past few episodes. The most consistent, I think, than the show has been all season. So like I said, ending regardless, I think this was like a really, really, really good episode. So
yeah, so cool for the show to spend this long with the villains without so much as a cutaway to Midoriya and co. I really appreciate the tenacity or the audacity, just be like, you know what, we're gonna do 5 or 6 episodes and not talk about the main plot or the main cast. I mean, obviously, I'm sure all of this ties together, but still, to not, to trust your audience enough that they want to see more of these characters anyway, is a kind of a bold storytelling move.
I would even call it it's they're a show, they tend not to have restraint. They're very comfortable with going all over the place, and sometimes you can follow it, sometimes you can't. But it was nice that they just stuck with this for the time being, and going forward, that's what we got. So yeah.
So episode picks up immediately where the last one left off, which is where Tenko Tomura, the kid, is wandering kind of bloodied through the streets. And he doesn't look like a super adorable kid. He doesn't really have the baby face going for him.
No.
He's got the red eyes and the his skin is matte, or his hair's all matted, and his skin is falling off because he's itching at himself like crazy. I saw a comment on Reddit that normally I would pass off as my own, but for once I won't. And someone said, the real tragedy, about Tomura Shigaraki's character is that not only did he come from an abusive family and all that, but when he finally, in this really, really messy way, was free of those awful circumstances, the major tragedy is that he's found by All For One. and not by a good person.
Yeah.
Because, he had went through something and is literally just a kid looking for help.
Mm-hmm.
And he just happens to, be met and greeted and brainwashed by, like, the biggest villain of the age. And if he had just met someone good, there's no telling where he would have went.
They really hit home just the blindness of society. Like, I guess maybe a byproduct of having so many heroes around at all time. It's it's like, I remember, this is such a strange like tangent, but like, I know when you're in first aid training, if there's ever an accident, you should always assume that like no one has called 911, because that's like the big thing. People assume that there's a crowd, there's drawn, at least a few people have called 911 for an emergency.
Yeah,
and totally. A lot of people will pass that off to someone else. So
everybody
it's like,
makes the same assumption.
Exactly, and that's just kind of the vibe I was getting. Him walking down the street, everyone's like, "Oh, well, mind you, there's like he looks spooky, and he had all the blood on him, and he was clearly not in a good way, and people were unnerved by him." But I think that they hit like 3 different people come across him in the street, and they all just, no, like, you're someone else's problem, and it really hits home just the kind of like the I can't think of the right word, but like, I guess laziness of society. Like, they're just like crutching on heroes. And, they've been kind of hitting this home a lot this season. Like, again, we're going back to the TV
like
reports.
Blind complacency.
Complacency, exactly. It's just, it's everything that was going on in his home is now going on out in the outside world moments after it happened. It's kind of shitty. Like,
100%.
They did a really good job last episode and this episode to genuinely feel for Tenko / Shigaraki, or, Tomura. So it's, brutal stuff.
There are some significant reveals and things that just sort of drive the plot forward here. So the first is that, like I said earlier, All For One immediately starts brainwashing the kid. He's immediately like, you want to keep these hands, the hands from his costume, on you at all times. You want to be reminded of what you went through, right? So it's like the opposite of like what like a therapist would do. It's like like you need to have a reminder of your trauma on you, and you need to embrace the violence it makes you feel at all times. The kid's getting sick. Like, it's pretty fucking dark when you think about it. So there's that, and then there's the and also, like, all of this voiceover happens over the scene of Tomura getting bullied by some kids, or Tenko's getting bullied by some kids. You hear All For One's advice, and then, there's the implication that Tenko ends up finding those same kids later and disintegrating them with his quirk, leaving them in a bloody heap. But the big development I wanted to talk about quickly was his name. So the origin of his name. These are 2 big things. One is his first name is changed from Tenko to Tomura, the verb for mourn, or to mourn, to express sorrow over death and farewell. And then the last name, Shigaraki, is All For One's last name.
Ding, 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 ding.
There you go.
That was, I couldn't believe that. That was insane.
And then he says, Tenko Shimura will be reborn as somebody who brings mourning, as Tomura Shigaraki. So now we know the name origin, and now we also know that All For One is last name Shigaraki. That's probably the biggest reveal that we've had about him so far, right?
I think so. Like, other than the fact that he has a brother, like, there's the connections. Yeah. Sorry, are we talking about All For One?
Yeah.
Yeah, other than the fact that we know his brother was, like, the creator of One For All, or it stems from him and all that. Like, we do have a little bit of backstory, but this is just another big piece in the puzzle. Like, so now we know the original wielder of, All For One was Shigaraki, I guess, technically.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't even put those dots together. I forgot they were brothers. So yeah, the original wielder is probably called Shigaraki as well, assuming they have the same last name or same dad.
I'm wondering if we're going to get another Vestiges moment in the final episode.
Yeah.
When we got a big reveal like this, I was like, oh, interesting.
It would be probably really well advised to try and bring the 2 plots...
Capitalize.
Yeah, I don't know if you bring them together or if you just try and split next episode to show you where we're leaving the season. But yeah, that would make a lot of good sense. We miss Midoriya. We've had a lot of really good Tomura. I also wonder just what's going to happen with One For All. Is he going to reappear? Is he going to make some kind of move? Is it completely out of the picture? I don't know.
If I had to get, while we're on it for the moment, I would think, because we talked about the ending that we don't love about this episode, but it really set up as All for One as like a backbencher. Like, I think he's genuinely gonna come back in as like a significant presence, not for like quite a while. Like, I think Shigaraki's gonna have his run for as the big bad, and then when needed to, I think All for One's gonna reappear as he's the all father of evil.
Yeah.
He can do what he needs to do, kind of tucked away in that prison cell. So I don't think he needs to be on the forefront of our minds for a little while. So it's he's been used excellently, like in these episodes, as like
sparingly.
But when he's on screen, like he just captivates the screen. Like
the
voice actor is tremendous.
A very good job of writing his dialogue, and I totally agree. The voice actor does a really, really, really great job. Like, go back and watch that season 3 fight with him and All Might. Like, the stuff he's saying is so dark. Like, he's like bringing up killing All Might's mentor just to get at him. Like, he's like very well done villain when he's on screen, which just isn't it often. Okay, flashback to the present. Tomura's fighting redestro, and you can see kind of everybody coming to their senses, realizing what's happening. Like, the final conflict is kind of happening, and everybody's like rushing to either help or to watch or whatever. But Gigantomachia arrives, and he starts rushing to the scene. Geten, or Jet, I forget the ice guy that was fighting Dabi.
Yeah.
He's worried clearly about redestro, so he also heads to the scene, and then. I don't know if redestro is sensing like danger here, but he brings up your Detranat patented burden amplifying steel. I wrote this down because it was laughably long. So let me say it all at once, and you guys can make it a ringtone. Detranat's patented burden amplifying steel pressure mechanism, claustro. Say that 5 times fast. That is obscene.
We were like hooting and hollering on the couch, laughing when this reveal. I could not believe it. I remember just yelling out loud. I was like, "Oh, kaiju fight!" Like,
yeah,
this is where's Godzilla going to show up?
Like, there's a difference between, I don't know, what are the state names that between Detroit Smash and
oh my god,
Detonator patented burden amplifying steel pressure mechanism. Claustro!
It's so bad. This redestro guy cannot
That's a villain not done well.
No, it's they've always kind of nailed the big bads, even like the middle tier ones, or even they've always ones that were there of significance. They were like rock solid, and redestro is just so. I genuinely can't tell if he's being used as like a springboard, or just like to try and set up all this other stuff, so like he is kind of clown. Like, maybe that's what it is too.
More
maybe
of a
he's kind of
plot device than anything.
Exactly. So like, there's no real need to like fully. It's just he just feels like a lot of hot air.
They've given him some of the worst dialogue in the season.
Oh my god! But like, he has these like random moments where like he's good. But even then, like, it's not even his original thoughts. It's him commenting on other things. It's all the stuff he's doing with Shigaraki. He's commenting on the state of Shigaraki's power, or he's awakening. He has all these like really cool lines, but it has nothing to do about his own situation. And it's like, man, have some confidence in yourself. Like, you run like a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. Clearly, you have all this tech.
Yeah,
all this stuff. I don't know. It just,
we get the answer to that towards the end here.
Yeah.
So you were like right on the money for like picking up on the Detranat thing, but we're not there yet. So.
Yeah.
Mr. Compress calls the doctor. Well, he doesn't call him, because like this is like another weird plot device. Is like the doctor is just sort of like omnipresent on a radio. Like, you just assume he's like listening all the time, and he just chimes in when he feels like it.
Well, this is like their test though, right? Like,
it
kind of makes sense that he's there but not
staying tuned.
Yeah.
So, Compress asks for some help, and he's like, more or less like, nah, fam, like, this is your fight. This is like, you got to get rid of these guys if you want my help, if you want to move forward. Which, like, to be fair, like you just said, were kind of the deal, the terms of the deal. So, Getten, like briefly has like a moment where it looks like he's engaging Gigantomachia because they're both rushing to the same place. Mr. Skeptic and the Liberation Army are also rushing to the scene, like kind of worried about redestro. I will say, just like a tip of the cap, I thought this was well handled because it feels like everyone's worried.
Yes.
Did you get that vibe?
A little bit. I
like
think so.
That everyone's like, we got to go help redestro.
Because
It just felt like they had a lot of loyalty.
They really set up like this whole like harbinger effect with the leader. Like they really set up the original Destro like on this massive, martyr pedestal, for what he did and for the cause and all that. And like redestro is, there's like some weird, like not heavy-handed, thankfully, but it's some very minor, like biblical stuff with just around like the redestro stuff and the destro stuff. Like he's literally the son of redestro, the unknown son, and he's here to like
carry out his father's will
and all this stuff. So it's like I said, it's nothing heavy-handed, but like they clearly worship this guy, and this kind of comes back in later in the episode. Again, all roads lead to the stuff we didn't enjoy. But, it's. But no, I bought it. Like the parts of the episode that like really worked. I find like they're very like good like visual cues, and again the past two episodes the voice acting is always pretty consistent in the show, but it's been really good, especially with the key players.
I agree.
But
so Tomura disintegrates one of redestro's arms, and he has a cool little line here where he goes stress, because redestro says something about stress 150% whatever because your superpower is stress. We're not going to go back to that conversation.
That was one.
Please see last episode's conversation about stress being a superpower. But he goes, stress 150%, huh? Sounds like plus ultra, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
This is when like he kind of kicks it into plus ultra, ironically.
Sure.
Tomura disintegrates the ground that redestro is walking on. Part of his armor is damaged as he sort of flies through the air. And then Tomura starts to look pretty crazy and is like destroying everything around him. There's this big boom, and I think like the audience in this moment is supposed to realize like, oh, like this was the explosion at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And then the animation there is pretty cool. Like there's like all this wind, and Tomura's hair looks kind of different. And there's this frame or this like brief scene of him walking up to redestro as redestro's on the ground, because that clearly ended the fight. And he kind of reminded me of Midoriya a little bit. Did you get that?
In what way?
Because he was, I mean, not his attitude or anything he was saying, but we've just seen Midoriya break his own arm so many times.
Oh, the discoloring of the arm.
The discoloring of the arm and the limp on the foot, because his foot was completely bloodied up. Now, we've never seen Midoriya that bloodied up, I don't think. But, well, maybe. But you know what I mean? Like his just like incessant, relentless, like, I'm going to win this kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And the fact that he busted himself up so bad. I don't know. I was like, that's someone's boy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And also he got like a Super Saiyan upgrade because his hair is completely white.
That's so dope.
It is dope. I hate to admit it. Do you think it stays like that?
No, because later in the episode he's kind of back to his self now.
It's still much whiter. I checked because I did watch this one twice, so it's not much whiter, but it's definitely like a completely different shade.
That's interesting. We'll have to see. Maybe we won't see it. We'll have to know whenever he reappears, which I don't think is next week's episode. So.
Yeah, and then why were redestro's? I didn't understand this. Why did redestro have to cut off his own legs?
I think.
Because Tomura asks him, did your legs touch the ground or something? And then redestro's like, I had to cut them off.
Maybe he was stuck in the suit or something from when he crushed the ground. Or
the only thing I could think of was like Tomura's quirk was traveling through the ground, and whatever was touching it would get disintegrated. So he cut off his legs, which is a weird. That part wasn't clear.
Like I said, this is where it's all going downhill. The cool stuff is over at this point.
Okay, so maybe we can probably breeze through like this last act, and then we can discuss it.
before we get into last night, I will say probably one of the most effective things in the episode was Gigantomachia coming. Like, it's like he found God. Like he's aware that, like, you know, Shigaraki is a worthy successor, and the way they would cut back to him every now and then during this fight, and every time you saw him, there would be slightly more tears running down his face, and his eyes would be wider. I was like, whoa, like they really, you could like even hear him breathing at one point, like just, you know, like I think the audio was dipped down a little bit. You can kind of just hear him like, you know, like he was just like in awe of Shigaraki. I thought that was really cool, and I was like, whoa, like he's got a new bodyguard.
Yeah, he definitely won that exchange, right? And he definitely earned it. He earned the W with Gigantomachia. I agree. The Metal Liberation Army and Gigantomachia, for that matter, they all pretty much arrive at the same time, and they arrive right in time to see redestro kneeling or bowing or surrendering to Tomura, because as Gigantomachia is having this moment that you just referred to, redestro is also having like an internal dialogue, being like, oh, maybe this guy can be, maybe he's the one I should follow, as opposed to, you know, leading the revolution myself. And there is like kind of this Jesus-y moment, you know, where he's like, you know, they're talking about, oh, even this young man is shining right now, and there's all these cool little shots of Tomura in the sun, kind of bloodied up and scary looking. And then,
but I do buy that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like, that's the thing, too. Like, this is not, I don't think this is the part where we have the problem with, but, like, you know, I think he kind of realized that, you know, and that's the thing, I never understood why they were kind of, like, you know, fighting in the first place. Because they all, even though they don't want the same goals, like, could he not see that Shigaraki just wanted to be evil and destroy and use his powers?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, could there not have been a conversation, you know, like, beforehand? Like, I think the first attempted phone call before they went on this quest they kind of touched it there. But again, it is believable that he would, like, see, like, Shigaraki as, like, meta power incarnate, you know, and just, you know, want to follow that, and he's the rightful, you know, whatever. So, like, I do buy that. And, you know, all these people, I guess they all were worshipping redestro to a certain extent. Like, why wouldn't they with Shigaraki? So it's, I don't know. It was kind of interesting, but
Waco vibes.
Yeah, big time.
There is this reveal. I don't think we knew this, right? So, as, you know, redestro saying, like, oh, we're going to follow this guy, that's when Tomura says, you're the CEO of Detronet, and you have money, right? Or that means you have money, right? Did we know he was the CEO yet?
I don't think so. I think we knew
Detronet?
I think he was a successful.
Oh yeah, I think we did.
He had made a lot of money, and he was
that.
the CEO of a company, but I don't think the name was used initially. Like we had heard it like sprinkled out, but I don't think at the beginning it was
for
used
those
when
support
we first
items.
met them.
Okay, so that connects the dots. That like, oh, okay, so that's how they're funded, and also that's where all these support items have come from. So, you know, that was like a brief, like, aha moment for me.
Yeah, but it just felt like, now that I think about it, they sprinkled that out for the purpose of like, oh yes, now Shigaraki's going to have money. You know, there is this 100%. Thing. So it's not like it came out of left field of like, now I'm just running like this multi-million-dollar operation now kind of thing. So it's funny to see like, oh yes, these breadcrumbs clearly led to something, which is kind of nice, you know, but putting it together.
Then on the news, we see that there's more or less been a cover-up, which is like super hard to buy. Like, heroes arrive late to the conflict and kill 20 members of the criminal group responsible for the case. What? You mean like an entire city getting leveled? And that was just weird. But like, I think they had to acknowledge it.
But didn't they say the heroes were late to arrive, and like people like civilians rose up?
Yeah.
Like going like in an act of vigilantism, technically, they were the ones who killed them before the heroes arrived. I think I catch that right?
I think it's a bit of both. They did say that heroes arrived late, and that like regular people used quirks. But I don't know. I think they had to acknowledge like where the fuck were the heroes during all this. And obviously like the heroes won't know what happened. I just thought it was like a weird tack.
You can tell they pawned it off on the reporter on 100%. Curious, I think her name was. I think we got like a newspaper article with her face on it.
Yeah. Toga is alive, bloodied up, but no worse for wear. Twice seems to be worse than before. He has a lot more personalities interrupting one another, which is hilarious. And then I think this is where the episode has this brief 3 or 4 minute kind of like preview showing us kind of what's next for everybody, because Tomura, or Skeptic and Trumpet, that's the politician, they arrive to pick up the League, and they take them to this big gathering of where all the Meta Liberation people are. And that's where Tomura and Redestro are on stage, and Redestro more or less pledges loyalty and says that Tomura is the boss now. And Tomura says everybody from the League, everybody on stage, which is like pretty much everybody from the League, will be a lieutenant, and they'll have teams assigned to them. So more or less, the Meta Liberation Front will fall under the League of Villains, and the League of Villains will each have like giant teams assigned to them per person. And they have a new name. Oh my god, what is it? Is it the Paranormal Liberation Front?
Dead on, but god awful.
Dead on, but god awful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brutal.
And the episode ends with Tomura talking to the doctor, saying, I think I must have hit that minimum level that you were talking about. And then the doctor says, I will grant you power if that is what you wish. And then we hit credits.
Not about this whole King Shigaraki bullshit. It's so lame, and so not from what he. It seems so ass backwards from what we've just been presented with him and his backstory and what he wants, and like kind of where he wants to, what his end game goals kind of are, and just like the getup they had him in, and like I don't know, just like the fandom and all that. It just seemed fucking weird. It seemed very uncharacteristic for something we just had revealed to us.
It feels like the conflict was constructed to, 1, give him a power boost, and 2, give him an army and make him a formidable foe. It's kind of like Kylo Ren killing Snoke so that Kylo Ren's the big bad. But then he's not.
Yeah. All for nothing.
Very weird. But like the journey was fun.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. The journey was great. We had fun along the way, and we learned some really cool things, some awesome, like, of a super flashback heavy season. Good God, there's so many flashbacks. These are the most effective flashbacks they've used in 24 episodes, and there's a lot because it feels like we've had 2 an episode. Even in the filler episode, we had some flashbacks. It's, I don't know, but weird ending. Like I said, by the end of this, I genuinely don't know where we're going to be going, because I think next week is the finale.
Yeah, I believe so.
I believe so. Like, we're just going to get a pop back to the heroes, and we get nothing for a year and a half. It's something a little sour, actually.
Really not a good episode, or not a good season for Midoriya and All Might. I feel like they didn't do anything, but whatever. Good setup for a movie in there. Good development for Shigaraki and the League of Villains. Learning more about them was really fun. But yeah, and jury's out. I think I'll wait. We'll have to wait and have like a solid recap of just kind of like our knee-jerk reactions once we've seen the finale, and see how we feel. On the whole, I'm a little bit torn. This was a tricky season. We've talked about on the post show, which, if you guys haven't heard that, it drops 2 days after these episodes, so definitely give it a listen.
Check it.
We've talked about the differences of binging a show and watching one week to week. I think this is a tough show, or a tough season rather, to watch week to week.
Big time.
Because there was so little movement. And we're not being overly critical, right? I mean, we have a podcast where we've spent 24 weeks talking about My Hero Academia. We like this show. But I think this was a tougher season to watch week to week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I think the pacing was a little bit messy. So, yeah.
I'm genuinely curious for, of a season of springboards. I'm curious as what this is going to kick us into for next week, and what the focus is. I hope they hit the ground running next week. I hope they don't waste time, because there's a lot of like stuff they touched this season that's kind of just sitting out in the open still.
Yeah.
To cover in 24 episodes. Like, there's no way they're going to get to a big final conflict
There's no time for a conflict.
There's
too
no
many
time.
chess pieces to set up.
Yeah.
So
I
maybe
think
maybe that's your finale, is just trying to get everybody in one room and be like, here's the Hawks plot, and here's here's how Midoriya and the League and the heroes are going to come to blows. But I just have a feeling that even if we get a cliffhanger ending with like conflict right on the other side, the way the show is paced, it's not like we're going to pick up in season 6 and it's going to be all action. It's going to be like, we'll pick up in season 6 and like build for 4 or 5 episodes. You know what I mean? Like, it's tricky. It's we could obviously be wrong. Like, I don't know if I would have predicted a 6 or 7 or 5 or 6 episode arc just with the League. So the show has surprised us a lot. So I'm intrigued. I think that's where I'll leave it. We've got another week and another episode to enjoy.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I think that about covers it for this week, though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys so much for listening. We mentioned a minute ago, check out the post show. We do it on Fridays. It drops 2 days after these episodes do. And we pretty much just talk about everything else that we're watching other than My Hero. So, the Tokyo Revengers just had their finale. We're both watching Sunny Boy and a bunch of other stuff. So check that out if you haven't already. Like, comment, subscribe, follow the podcast, support the podcast on whatever social media platform you like. And we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.